So welcome to everybody, and it's very nice to be here. For myself, I will say to you, yes, I have certificates in several areas of mediumship, but to myself, the certificate is not exactly always the thing with me. I don't think a certificate makes a medium, but I do hold a lot of certificates and a lot of education and training purposes. And also, yes, I'm a tutor at the Arthur Findlay College. I don't really use my title CSNU medium, but it is accreditation that we have within the Spiritualist National Union, which is important, especially for people who are going to do public work, because you do have to get a standard to actually meet that. So that is what I do. One of my main things I'll start off with is what I always say is, yes, I am a medium, but overall of that, I'm actually a really probably a adventurous spider, I will call myself, because people have told me I spin webs with people in lots of places that I go. I tend to meet people up and knit them together. So I have a very strong belief in community. And my logo of my school, my teaching, and when I call it a school, that is my brand name. So it's a brand name because I basically have a school without the walls. And my logo is unity in community. And one of the things the spirit world want us to do is to be unified together as people. So for myself, with my mediumship, I have reached a very good standard that I have to work hard for. It's not something that I demanded or looked out for. I was a very, very reluctant medium, but I was very blessed, just to finish this off, in being around wonderful, wonderful pioneers of our work, and a lot of them don't actually work anymore. They've passed on. So I was very, very blessed, and very blessed that I had a wonderful father in England who was a UK well-known medium and teacher. So that's how I sort of had my training, by really watching, looking, listening, and being involved. And yes, I attended the Arthur Findlay College for many years, a couple of weeks a year, for probably about 20 odd years. And then I was invited to become a tutor and put myself through the training for that. And I was already teaching outside of the college, so that was like another string to my bow. And I absolutely love the college. I absolutely love the Arthur Findlay College, the standards they have, what they produce, how they help people. And it really is still the mecca for mediumship within the world. There's no reason why they can't still communicate. There's nothing that holds a spirit back from communicating in the spirit world other than their own belief and own mind system. So I do believe that we hear a lot of stories these days from mediums who say, in fact, I just had this with a reading last week from a medium who told a couple that their son wasn't ready to communicate. And basically it's down to the fact that the medium didn't have the power to communicate, or actually wasn't able to communicate quite freely. So it's more to do with the medium's ability. When we go to the spirit world, we do know that our loved ones do take people and help people with the healing aspect in whatever area they may need. But I've certainly never heard of it stopping people from communicating back to the spirit world. It would be more a matter of choice of the spirit individually, I would say. I've had communications from people, and I've actually communicated with someone who passed in the middle of a sitting, and the family said they're not dead, and actually returned home to find they'd had a call to say the lady had passed, and she communicated straight away. So I would say there's no time frame. Again, it's a personal choice of the spirit that evolves in the spirit world as to when and how. I do feel that we should be very careful about demanding of the spirit at that time. And I do feel that sometimes it's not needed for grieving families to rush to mediums. So I would say when the family feels right, or the loved one who's left behind feels right and seeks that solace, that comfort, or that understanding to aid their healing in the grief area, that's the right time for them. And as for the spirit world, I don't think there's any time limit. I really believe it becomes a situation where we look at the evolution and the progress of the soul and the spirit. Because if somebody moves to the spirit world where they know of the spirit and they know communication is possible, they may endeavor to do so as much as they can and quickly. And then we might have other souls who don't quite believe, not quite understanding, or wanting to see if it works, etc. And so there's a time frame there for the individual soul in their own field of progression once they've moved to the spirit world. So I'm a great believer that if we are working in that power correctly and our minds are blended, then there's no need for questions, because the spirit already knows they have to give evidence of their survival, and they already know what memories they want to impart. They may perhaps want to let you know how things are different that they've got to the spirit world. They may indeed want to infiltrate your thoughts and your mind with how things are different from them. But I believe once we engage our own consciousness and we engage our own brain, we then start to destabilize the communication, because then we are putting our need before the spirits. So I would say prompting them with your own thoughts. It is okay to obviously send that thought out, but don't demand of it. And in the midst of a flow of communication, don't do it, because you will destabilize that contact. Allow the spirit to bring what they need to bring before you would put that thought forward. The presence, one and only key. The presence and the feeling of the spirit. Today we have a lot of people that mistake psychic energy for spiritual energy, because the auric field is always in a constant state of flux and creating vibration and energetic fields. And where we have a highly psychic charged atmosphere, we can then generate an energy and a psychic power which may not be led or indicated by an independent soul in the spirit world. So the difference is learning to sit and blend with the power of the spirit, so you become aware of an actual presence. And it's one of the hardest things for mediums to understand. And so today, and I'll be quite frank about it, we have a lot of psychics operating under the banner of mediumship, because they're working in a psychic bubble of energy or their own energy rather than the presence of the power of the spirit. So that has to be developed over time, where we have to sit to build that up naturally, because the power of us, which is the soul within, expands, and then that blends with the power of the spirit world. The presence of the spirit does not always have personality. The personality only becomes into function for communication. So, for example, if I'm going to sit with the presence, I can sit and take my consciousness into that lovely quiet state of being with my spirit self, and be aware of the bigger connection I am to other things, the bigger connection that creates that spirit link. But I don't necessarily have to have communication. I need information, and there's no personality there. I've simply blended with the atmosphere and the presence of the spirit without a personality functioning to bring forward identification. That's a very fine line, and that stems right from mental mediumship to physical mediumship. I'm a great believer that the content of your work comes from your intent. So I would say that if your intention is correct from your heart and your mind, and you can get yourself into a quiet place, and for myself, I will send out some thoughts to the spirit world. Here I am, dear spirit, willing to be of service, or just willing to be with your world today to build up my own power. And then I will sit and I use a mantra for a couple of minutes, and then eventually my consciousness drifts. So the mantra becomes like an echo, and I know from the feeling of me that I'm entering a deeper state of relaxation. But it's not meditation for the well-being. It's a state where you become relaxed, but very, very consciously aware that there's different shifts around your mind. And so I would say to people, if you just set the correct intention and sit quietly by yourself, try to do it in the silence rather than using music or guided meditations. And the reason why is, we have this discussion over power all the time. The reason why is your mind and your brain starts to become like a recording, and it waits for the prompts of the music that you know, or the prompts of the words that you know in the meditation, so it becomes repetitive. So I would always recommend practicing the discipline of being in the silence. It's okay at the beginning of development to start off with some music or to start off with a guided meditation, but be mindful that that is just about you quietening yourself. I would certainly recommend to practice discipline of sitting in the silence. Well, I can't say you have to, because I developed at home by myself, and my father was in England, my dad was in England, so I would sit under his guidance and keep a journal of my experiences and then talk to him on the phone. But then eventually I only joined a circle many years after I'd already been sitting, and I only lasted about 6 months because I was like a free-minded medium. But it was good for me at the time for certain disciplines. I would say, yes, you can develop at home, but there will come a time where you will need community, whether that community is your circle, whether that is a couple of friends, because you need to share your experiences to see in what area or what road you're going, and if it's correct. So to find a circle, I will tell you, is very difficult. And I will say this to all of you: check your teacher out, watch your teacher work, listen to their background, research them, look at how they operate within the mediumistic experience or the psychic experience themselves before you put your spirituality in their hands. Right, okay. Well, again, that comes down to that lovely power. If you're blending and sitting in the power correctly, the flow and information of detail will follow naturally. And I have to be honest, I don't know why everybody gets so hooked up on names. Anybody can be Tom, Martha, or Joe. And I always think it's nicer for the spirit world to come through and give you information about themselves and to the recipient than giving you their full name. If you have someone communicating from the spirit and they want to tell their loved one they're okay, they love them, and offer some form of evidence, which, by the way, the spirit world know they have to do. We don't need to ask them for evidence. It's a higher intelligence of consciousness, so they know they have to give us that. So if you actually have someone coming through expressing that with no name, I would say to you, the content of the other information to the recipient is mostly what's needed, rather than say your dad's called Tom. However, if you're blending correctly and your power's strong enough, the only reason you can't get names is usually because you tell yourself you can't. I'm a great believer the spirit world is limitless and you can get absolutely anything from the spirit world. But we've been very geared up over the years to get these shopping lists, to get these ritualistic, how did you die? How old were you? What was your weight? What was your height? What was your relationship? Blah, 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 blah. And I will say to you, when we all die and we all go there, do you really want to be remembered as a detail and a fact? I don't want to come back saying I'm 5'4" with a pot belly and had grey hair. I want to actually come back and say to my family, I'm okay. I've met my other family members. I'm very close to you. I'm still alive and I still love you. So for myself, at the beginning of my mediumship 30 years ago, I was very hooked into getting the detailed evidence because that was something that we did. But I've learned through the maturating of the craft, as I matured with my ability, that it's unnecessary. It's necessary to give the evidence, but it's more necessary to allow the spirit a voice for what they want to impart rather than our need to prove fact or detail. But in saying that, I will say this to you. If you have an open, expansive mind and you can observe detail, for example, if I go to work in Europe and I'm working with students as a foreign language, I will take notice of names of suburbs, street signs, of words they use in their vocabulary. So that is in my consciousness. And once that's in my consciousness, the spirit world then can use that in their communications. If you have a closed mind and you say, I can't get this, I can't do that, that's how you will work. So I say to the spirit, I want anything, everything, you're limitless, so am I, let's have it. And you can get the most bizarre things, from toffee pudding and no front teeth to a runny nose to newspapers over shoes. You can get really unusual things which was part of a family's memory. And so when you bring those memories forward that are really real like that, that's so much more meaningful than Tom Smith, because Tom Smith's name could be found anywhere. Does that make sense? So I think getting names is too much focus on it. I think if you get them, fantastic. And I do names myself sometimes, fabulous. but only if the spirit know that. And I've said to my spirit people, I want you to bring the gold and the dust of you. Tell me the dusty bits about you, and then tell me the gold bits about you. So that means I'm open to anything. And I do feel that we have become stipulated, rigorous, and ritualistic, that we've now got conveyor belt mediums, rather than people being creative in their craft and expansive in their work to be able to share different aspects. We would never ever, and I want to express that this is from Christine Morgan's experience and point of view. People have their own journeys and their own experience. I'm not God, nor are my words carved in stone. But for myself, we would never ever ask who they want to talk to. Never. Because the spirit world is an intelligence. And once that person has made a booking with a medium, the soul in the spirit knows the light is switched on with the medium and which medium their loved one's going to be visiting, so they will impart that information. So therefore, there's no need to actually go through that other process of asking who do you want to communicate with. If someone is very relevant, once you open the reading, the person they actually want to communicate, if the blending is correct, will usually be there if they want to communicate with their loved one. So asking for someone and then you get nothing actually means that it's nothing. They're either not there, you're working on a psychic level, and that's another thing you have to be careful of, because you hold all the memories of your loved ones within your energy field, and you can have someone talking to you about someone who you've missed for a long time because it's in the forefront of your energy field. And so they'll pick up the name, they'll give you information about them, and you'll think they're there. But if there's no presence of the spirit, the soul of the person's not there, they're just reading the memory field. I do a lot of grief work, and I would say this: one of the biggest things that we have to learn as mediums is to learn to listen. And I have to be dead honest, I had to learn to listen because I'm a talker, I'm an ex-hairdresser, so I'm gobby. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I was born talking, my mother said. So I've had to learn through my craft and ability to listen to what my clients are not saying and to feel in between their words. So you can often feel the grief. So for those of you who are mediums, you can feel when there's a grieving energy. And so in that case, when they're so overcome with grief, one of the things that you don't try to prove anything to them. You listen to feel where they are in their stage of grief. If they need onward going counselling, you recommend a professional grief counsellor. You also recommend them coming and dealing with the grief in their way. You can't say to a grieving person, that's all right, you'll see them again, they're still alive in the still in the spirit, what are you worrying for? Because they literally are heartbroken. So you have to learn to listen and pull on everything you've got within you with empathy and compassion to understand where they're actually at. And then I would say to them to just simply acknowledge the feelings they have, to recognize that it's a very valid feeling, not to fight it, but to go with it. And then over a day-to-day process, as time comes on, they go into their own form of healing, whether that be a counselor, whether that be taking time out, spending it with other friends and family, not to rush from medium to medium. I think one of the things we try to do, and mediums are the worst, we're the worst, we try to sugarcoat it with ourselves. And yes, we're okay, we know they're alive, but actually then that raw feeling of loss, once that envelops you, you have to acknowledge, otherwise you will suppress that emotion. And we now know today that we suppress emotion at cellular level. So the cellular memory of the structure of the human being suppresses emotion, so it's not healthy. So if you feel like you want to go scream, I say to my clients, go scream. If you want to swear and rant and rave or get angry, express it. If you feel like you need to cry, cry. But always remember that the clouds do move and there will be a pathway of healing for you when you are ready to accept that. And in that acceptance, I certainly recommend them talking to people, doing things in their life that bring them a little bit of joy, because obviously we know grief can lead to depression. So it depends on the individual. But one of the main things I would say is people must learn to listen. We certainly can have flashes or little spurts of things before our sessions with people. But I think if you are working in the moment, you don't need to prepare in a way of a few days before or the day before. What I would say your preparation should be would be going, sitting and blending with the spirit world, letting them know your intention, that I'm about God's work, I'm about to do my work. And so I'm going to be here today, spirit. And you might have that feeling within you, oh, I feel I need to sit. And I would probably just for 10 minutes before I start my work for the day, would sit and talk to the spirit world. But I have been known to be looking for my shoes under my bed and then answering the phone and go straight into a reading, because my mind is disciplined. And I know that when I'm working in that element of power, that is my total focus. I do not believe that the spirit hang around us a few days before a reading. That is often, maybe you might have a spontaneous situation where the spirit might touch your mind. And then what happens is the human brain holds on to the experience and replays it. And that. Okay, well, I will say to you, obviously, allow yourself very naturally to be drawn to what you want to read. Don't feel you have to read to be philosophically accomplished, okay? Because it won't work. And all that will be is parrot fashion. It will be parrot fashion theoretics out of books. And so I will say, sit with the spirit and allow yourself to be drawn to a topic or a book and just read, and then look at something and then take a notepad or your laptop or a recorder and just make notes of what it means to you. So you're putting a personal aspect in there and you're not repeating philosophy, because, you know, we've done the pioneers for years. We've got the same philosophy for years. And our spiritualist philosophy is fantastic. I mean, when you look at some of the stuff we've got, and across the world, like America, Australia, New Zealand, we had amazing mediums. But everybody focuses on the UK mediums because that's our most well known. So if you expand your research, read a little bit of different things, and then look into it, you can form your own form of philosophy. And one of the things I will say to you, every philosophy must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So make sure you start to do it in point form. So your talk has a theme, and that you bring your conclusion to reach exactly what it was meant to do at the beginning with your statement, and leave your audience on a positive statement, a positive note. But also remember, philosophy has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that you keep your themes realistic. So today's philosophy, people don't want to be talked at. They want that interjection of something personal, but also something that's easy to digest. So I would say to you, Susie, go for walks or sit in the power and sit with a notepad and pen and start off putting points.
Right.
Start off
Do
putting
automatic writing?
Well, no, automatic writing is in trance. So inspired, it would be inspired writing, intuitive writing. Yeah, you have to be a trance medium and working in the trance state for anything to be automatic. So it would be inspired and intuitive writing. But just start making it, read something and go, you know, that really makes sense to me. And then put points down. And as you create this, you'll find that you'll create a philosophy. And if you're talking about doing a philosophy in a church or a center, I would say to you, even if you repeat the same philosophy 6 times, do it so you know it. Do it so you know it. Very important. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Now, if it's not in church, obviously in church I couldn't do it, but I also have a shamanic side to me.
Lovely.
I tend to sort of mix the two a bit. Obviously not in church, but otherwise just with general people you're talking to, that's
right.
how I tend to work.
I don't think there's anything problem with that. I think, look, I'm a spiritualist, but I'm a universal spiritualist. I embrace all aspects of things. And I think you can pick out the seeds of truth and love and beauty from so many different things and bring it into your mediumship in a very creative way. Spiritualists don't rule the world with spirits at all.
Yeah.
It's just a platform that we work on. But I mean, I'm a universalist, so I will look at everything. I mean, I love Rumi, I love Buddhism. Anything that sings to my heart, I will use it. So
because I have
integrate
been
things.
investigating the Sufi and also Kabbalah
Yes, it's
recently as
lovely.
well,
And take
combining
what's
that
right
in.
for you. Take a jewel out of everything and create your own precious stones of your own philosophy.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Now, Kylie M., you have some questions?
Oh, I can't see Kylie. I've got a lovely picture here.
Kylie, can you unmute yourself? There we go. Here's Kylie coming on.
Hi,
now.
Kylie.
I was just asked not too long ago, why do some spirits continually keep coming through to the sitter when they've requested and put it out there? They do not want to talk to them because they keep showing up to the same sitter, like a father and mother, and they don't want to talk to them.
Often it is usually a need in the spirit world where there's healing taking place. So often if we have someone who wants to apologize or wants to have unfinished business sorted out, they will make themselves known quite regularly. So until they can't make their family member or loved one, whoever it is, or friend, take it, but they can obviously still try if there's a need for healing. And in that case, I would say to the sitter then that they should maybe stop having readings for a little while until they do the healing within themselves.
Okay, that's interesting because I ended up having the grandfather and she only knew him when she was 2. And then he brought the father through, and then the mother came through, and then they all stood there as a triangle, and she was getting ganged up on, and she's like, they're always coming through.
Well, that's right. Of course they are, because they're the closest to her. And it's quite common for other family members to open the door for the main communicator. Say she wanted to communicate with her mum, it's quite common for granddad and the father to be there. Because remember, when you open your mind to the spirit world and one communicator, you open it to a grand family. Probably a lot of the family members are there. So it's about the medium being disciplined enough to hold the one communicator, the one contact.
Yeah, well, I knew there wasn't much with the grandfather, and I knew that he was bringing the father in, and she did not want to speak to her father.
That's okay. So in that case, you have to honor that, and you just send a little thought to the spirit and say, unfortunately, your daughter's not ready to communicate with you yet, and move to the mum. Because you can't control that. So there's a healing aspect needed there.
Yeah, I tried to cut the link and thank them and let them go, and they wouldn't go, so I decided to put them in a room and shut the door.
Yeah. They probably would have gone. It might just be in your mind that's feeling them or hearing or seeing them still. But once they know they're not going to come through with the communication, sometimes they can stand back and let someone else communicate, or often the link will just close down.
Okay, thank you.
But you do really have to think about the whole purpose we do private readings is healing. On a spiritual level, mediumistic, it's healing for people here and in the spirit world. And people forget that people who go to the spirit world need healing as well sometimes.
Yeah, she said it was the 6th time they're coming through and it's becoming annoying. She wasn't angry at me.
Why is she coming for sittings then?
Because she's practicing doing readings.
Well, she needs to have a look at her purpose and why, and also to understand there's a healing aspect needed. And one of the things to go around that, and if I can just go on a little bit here, Wendy, is she could practice within herself just sending loving, healing thoughts to her father in the spirit world. Okay. And to say, I don't really need to communicate, but, you know, there's forgiveness or there is love there, but I'm just not ready to face this yet. And, you know, she can, because part of this is about herself and her own healing. Yes. And it doesn't matter how many mediums she goes to, they will probably show up.
Yes, that's what she said. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine. Right. Nina S., you have a question.
Nina. Hi, Nina.
Hi. My question is, how can I make the connection stronger if it doesn't feel as strong mid-reading? Like I feel like I dropped it maybe.
Right, so you start off okay, Nina, and then it drops?
Yeah.
Okay, that's just to do with your power. Also, it could be to do with the fact that that might be all the spirit world's got to say. And so, you know, we're how I teach and how we work, we don't do private readings longer than 30 to 45 minutes. We never have people doing hour-long sessions because you're working into the psychic field with that as well. So you may, most of my readings maximum will be 40 minutes, maximum, unless I'm dealing with a big grieving situation. Normally by 30 minutes, the spirit's been in, I've worked a bit intuitively, they've given their information and they're gone. So if it happens where it stops, consider that, one, it might just be all they've got to say. Secondly, it might be that you need to build your power a little stronger to be able to hold that communication a little bit more. It can only be one of two things, but one of the things people mistake, I mean, I have people who come to me, and I had a lady just recently who said, Christine, I'd like a 2-hour session. And I said, impossible. I'm not going to do a 2-hour session. We work 2 hours when we're doing a public demonstration, but not for one person. You know, private reading is 30 to 45 minutes maximum. So that's because you should be, if you're doing a private reading, your ability and power should be at a level professionally where you can go in, work, and then come out, because your reading builds. It starts off at a psychic level and it moves up. And at the peak of the reading is the spirit. And then it comes and flows back down again. So once you start to understand the ebb and flow of the power and the ebb and flow of the conscious mind, you understand just how little time they're actually there. They're actually only there for a very few minutes. Sometimes if we can hold a good contact for a good 10, 15 minutes, it often can be interspersed with different things. Does that make sense to you? I would say practice deepening your power a little bit, Nina.
My question is, do you feel you should be asking questions or just let the spirit give you what they're going to give you? Because I always get the weirdest stuff in my readings, like seriously weird stuff, and it resonates with the person, and they're like, I mean, it's just weird stuff. And so, but I never ask them, you know, like how they died, because I'm like, they know how, those people know how they died usually. And, you know, that's not something I care for someone to bring in with my son. I know how he died. I don't need you to tell me how he died.
I agree. I don't think you should ask questions at all. It goes back to what I said before. If the blend is correct, I don't think you need to ask questions. You can communicate. So I will be maybe working with the communicator in the spirit world and bringing through information. And my client might ask a question and I will say, I can put the thought out, but I can't guarantee that will be answered. And sometimes if the spirit have heard it, they will impress me later in the reading with that information. But I certainly don't go back and forwards about questions. I don't think you need to. I think you should allow the spirit to bring what they want, because it's about you exploring your connection with them and you're interpreting that connection through your sense of perception. And I certainly don't agree with regurgitating the death. I don't even think it's necessary. Sometimes people will say it. Yes, we do say it, but I don't think, we're not in the business of regurgitating pain. And we have to, we don't need regurgitation of death aspects. For example, I did a session last week with a murder and it was quite violent. And he showed me and told me exactly. And I just gave enough detail to the parents to let them know I really was with him about the description. But I didn't have to be as vocal about absolutely everything I was seeing because it was so horrific. Why would I need to push that into their mind again? They're working hard to let go of that. But so I say to the spirit world, I have that, I can express that, but then I'll find a very gentle, nice way to say it to the family so they understand.
Thank you very much.
How do you turn off after a reading like that? I know you've done some pretty horrendous sort of suicides and murders and violent. Does it affect you as a medium? Do you find that you're getting flashbacks, or how do you control that?
I think I'm just very disciplined, Wendy. That's come through years of experience. But what I do is that particular situation, which was really, really big last week. The circumstances weren't great. But what happened was, after discovering who he was, giving the evidence, etc., he actually directed the reading in a different way, which brought more joy and upliftment to the family. And so that was very positive. And I do find the spirit world do that. But for myself personally, after that reading had finished, I will always just send a thought to the spirit world, because I think that I'm really quite privileged to be given that information to help a family like that. So I will say to the spirit world, first of all, thank you for trusting me with that, because that was deep. And the knowledge that I've learned from that is that there's always someone else worse than you, always. But secondly, switching off, I literally just get myself into everyday life. I just literally go and have my lunch, get back on my laptop and work, go for a walk. I just leave that world behind. I just close that door and I just become the living Christine. So I don't get flashbacks or anything. Certainly you do get times where you remember certain points, but you very rarely remember all of your readings, or I don't. And things like that, I don't want to remember, because normally I will finish that with them as I say thank you, and I will say, I hope that you find peace and happiness within the world of the spirit and your own progression. And so by putting a positive thought to that, I think you stamp out all that you brought up that was negative.
Some mediums say that when they're talking to the spirit, they actually feel the way they died. Is this something that you can discourage, or is it part of the process?
Again, it comes down to that lovely organ of the brain. What happens is the spirit world work through your sense of perception. And so what takes place is they are able to touch the autonervous system of the body through memory of the brain to recreate a feeling of something that's happened. But let me tell you all, it's very, very fleeting. It's like that. Oh, oh. Like I've been shot, I've been stabbed, all that strangled, and it's very fleeting, very fleeting. So when that happens, what takes place is the brain can hold it, and the medium's mind can hold it, regurgitate it and replay it like a video, like I said before, and they think they're holding that, and they're not. It's impossible, literally vibrationally impossible for us to hold the pain from the spirit world of a memory. It is the brain engaging in the thought and recreating through feeling those symptoms in the medium's body. And so we're doing it to ourselves, basically, is what I'm saying. So with that sort of thing, yes, you can get that feeling, but remember, it's only a thought. It's not physically happening to you. It's the thought of a memory that's coming through your mental perception. So it's impossible for you to hold it, the same as it's exactly impossible for you to keep a hold of a thought physically of that you had what you had for breakfast. You know it mentally, and you have the taste because you eat it, but that's all it is, a mental thought. So you have to break it down in a vibrational understanding as to what's taking place with you. And a lot of it, Wendy, is people will say, oh, I feel really sick, I've had that. And different things can affect you, but it's about the medium being aware of their own self-awareness within the communication and how to deal with it.
Thank you. Do you ever have spirits coming through saying, so-and-so killed me, or he was the one that does that? How do you cope with that as a medium?
It's a big one. Okay, so I have had that on a few occasions, and often, normally that information can be verified, but I'm very, very wary of who I would say it to and how I say it. And one of the things that we have to remember is that everything is open to interpretation. So because we're open to interpretation, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct. So we have to be very mindful of that. And what I would never, ever say to my people, oh, Tom Smith killed your son, Joe. Even if Joe was telling me Tom Smith did it, I would get the spirit to bring me around more information, see if they can impress my mind with other information and other facts that knit that picture together. But I have had it on a couple of occasions and it's proved correct. But I would never blatantly come out and accuse anybody, because the police won't take it. I mean, in America, I do believe your psychic information stands up in a court of law. It doesn't in Australia. And it's quite a hard one, because not everybody knows who's murdered them either. And everybody thinks because they've been murdered that they've got the answers in the spirit world. They haven't. Sometimes they don't know facts about their own death. And that's something that people find it very hard to understand. And the other thing is, sometimes there's avenues of expression where we're not meant to know. We're not meant to know. But definitely, I think it is something you have to handle very delicately, Wendy, and very compassionately.
So what do you do when you have a client coming in really wanting psychic information? Am I going to get a new job? Is my husband cheating on me? All of those sort of
The
things.
usual.
The usual one.
Right, okay, how much money am I going to win?
How much, all
Well,
that kind of stuff. How do you handle those?
I just work as a psychic. I just work intuitively. I don't engage the spirit. I often say to them, for myself, usually the spirit world comes in somewhere. So I always love it if they make a little appearance, because then I can let my client know. And I love that. But I will work on an intuitive level. And like at the moment, I'm doing a lot of psychic work with COVID. People want to know about business, etc. But also remember, when we're working like that, we're only ever working with potential and possibility. Always only potential and possibility, not necessarily actuality. So I would say to you, yes, we do that, and you just work purely on an intuitive level. And sometimes the best answer is you don't know. If you don't know, tell them. You know, and encourage people to think for themselves. Like I get a lot of people say, what's my soul's purpose? What job should I be doing? I want to change my career. And I say, well, what do you like to do? What are you interested in? I can't find that for you, because that's an independent thing, right? So I usually end up doing more of a counseling session for them to explore themselves and what makes them tick and what inspires them. So that's how I'd work with that.
Do you find it helpful to use tarot cards?
Oh, I love to play with the tarot cards myself, but that's about it. I don't use them in my readings at all. I don't use any tools whatsoever. I just work with the mind. But I do love the tarot. I think the tarot is absolutely fantastic. The symbology is amazing, and it can tell us a lot of things, yes. But again, it's open to interpretation.
What do you do if a client is unhappy with a reading?
Well, first of all, you must always refund and offer a complimentary another session if they wish to have it. You always discuss it with them, and always be honest, and remember that we are just the people who partake in this sharing of information. We're not God. We can interpret wrong, we can make mistakes, and that's why it's important to express and let people understand what you do at the beginning. I would always say you offer a refund, and you ask them why, and look at where you may have gone wrong, and you offer maybe another complimentary session in the future, and you acknowledge it, and you act with grace and professionalism. And then if it's, if you've done something spiritually wrong, you've not got the right person, or you give the wrong impression of something or interpreted something wrong, you talk to the spirit world and you say, I made a mistake. That was not good. I wasn't on the ball today. I did something wrong. I've refunded this. Perhaps another time we can try again when my mind is right. But always reevaluate your work, have a look at it, and always be humble enough to know that you will be wrong at times.
Do you psychically protect yourself before a reading?
Never. I just put my lipstick on. No, never. I just put my not at all. I don't believe in psychic protection. I need more protection from people here than I do anything with the spirit world or psychic. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in white lighting everything. I believe white light is a thought and a word that we've used and bantered around, and it just means positive thought and good thoughts. But no, I don't actually have to protect myself from the spirit world at all, or from anything psychic. I don't believe it. One, I believed I'm too loved by the spirit. I feel I'm too full of love to give to people for anything to hurt me. And secondly, I just know it's impossible to do.
What do you say to people who are concerned that their loved one is earthbound? Again,
this is my very strong opinion. There's no such thing as an earthbound spirit. There's no way that vibrationally we can let go of the physical husk that is the overcoat of the soul, that we let go of that in that moment of death, and then you move into the other higher level of vibration of the spirit world and be stuck. There's no world between worlds. So you can't get stuck. You can't be earthbound. People who are telling people that spirits are earthbound are not educated in the understanding of the formation of the spirit. So with that, it is more to do with the thoughts of the person holding their loved one close to them, feeling that they're there, often when people pass and the presence of the spirit is quite close, say we have someone who passed and they want to let their family know they're okay. It's very common in the first few months, especially the first few weeks, for that loved one to be around the family, trying to get across to them, I'm still alive, I'm still here. And so we do feel that presence quite closely. And that's where people sometimes think they're earthbound, that they've not moved on. But the truth of it is, the best people to help people when they've passed is actually the spirit world, because they're the ones who discover the healing, sort out the healing. They're the one who associate their loved one coming to the spirit world, and they're prepared to greet them, even in accidents. If someone has a sudden accident, the spirit family knows in the spirit world vibrationally and gathers around them. The old saying of everybody dies in the hand of an angel is very, very true. Whether that angel be a family member or a friend, but they can't be earthbound. And once you understand quantum physics and you understand the vibrational frequencies, you see it's more related to the thoughts of people here than actually the world of the spirit. And it's a very touchy topic for some people, because some people have got very strong beliefs in this, but I really have to say to you, do your research and homework, because I totally disagree. In the 30 years and the millions of spirit that I've communicated with, I've never once met an earthbound soul.
Lovely. Now we have a question from Kylie M.
Yeah, Christine, I just wondered what the best ways that you have found for somebody to contact their past loved ones, like through dreams, through inspirational writing, meditation. What have you found has been the most effective? And how do you do it? Like how often?
My thoughts. I just send a thought to my loved ones. They're not on my demand. I will talk to my loved ones and send thoughts out. And I don't believe the spirit world get all of our thoughts. I don't. And we know a lot of stuff is lost in translation. I send a thought out. Sometimes I'll sit quietly and talk to them, and often find later, a few days later, sometimes a week, something will come to me spontaneously in an inspired form. But also I'm an extremely strong psychic dreamer, which is another area I teach in. So I really trust my spirit dreams and psychic dreams. I know when I'm having a visitation from the spirit. And often, because I've got a very busy, quick mind anyway, that is their best way of communicating with me. And again, it's the feeling I have. I know the difference between the presence of one of my loved ones in my dreams as opposed to just dreaming about them in a memory form. There's a definite difference in the feeling. I just know, I feel my loved ones very close to me, particularly, like, even talking to you now, I'm aware of the presence of the spirit. I don't know who's there, but I'm aware of the presence. Not that I need to have that communication with any personality, it's just that I know that other world is there. And I'm very aware often of my dad in particular, my brother, who were both mediums, around me when I'm teaching. So I'll often send a thought, or if I say something wrong or do something wrong, I often find it's brought back to me when I least expect it. I'll get a flash or a word, particularly from my dad.
So those flashes
Yeah.
and words are something that you know instinctively, out of the blue, you're doing your own thing, that they have contacted you. You're like, okay, I've just been stopped with that word.
And it's just, I will do something. At the moment, I'm writing two different things. I'm writing something for the college, and I'm writing some other course content. And my mind goes blank, and I go, okay, I need to go for a walk. I have a little spot where I sit near the water, and I call it my spirit spot. So I'll go to my spirit spot, and I write, and I send thoughts, and I laugh with them. And I say, you must think I'm really daft, because my head's like a machine. But, I just want to put these thoughts to you, and let's see where we go with it. And then that will go, and then maybe 2 days later, a thought will drop in my mind just like that. And I could be cooking or washing, having a shower or something. And, oh, that's something I need to think about. That's related to the thoughts I had the other day. So there's like this little lovely invisible knitting of threads going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You just have to trust. You have to trust.
Christine, what is the best thing and the worst thing about being a medium?
Ooh. Gosh. The best thing about being a medium is I think discovering that you are really loved. And I believe that to be not just of people here, but I believe that of the spirit world, my loved ones, my family and friends in the spirit world. But I also believe in that source, that power, that God, that cosmic consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that we're all part of that. And the spirit and the world is one big family. And I believe one of the most best things about being a medium is that I find great joy in helping people. But I also found it's gave me great joy as a person because it's helped me find myself. And I'm still finding her.
And the hardest
the hardest thing truly relates to the same answer, is that I have to look at the dark side of my nature as well, and I can't get away with it. That I'm personally responsible for my thoughts, deeds, and actions. That doesn't mean I'm an angel. As you know, Wendy, I'm no angel. I'm a very real human being who lives a human life, tells dirty jokes. I can swear on occasion. I like a drink. You know, I'm like everybody else. I'm just real, but it also makes me very aware. It's not the worst thing. I think it's a good positive thing when you look at it. But the worst thing is sometimes you do have to face the dark side of your shadow self. And you go, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that part of you, Christine. Where did she come out today? Who was that? How can you possibly think you can work in a world of love and joy and then have to avoid the dark side? But the dark side comes up really in a positive way to help us grow. But at the time, sometimes I think it can be the bad side because you can't get away with anything because you're responsible.
So can you tell us a little bit about the workshops that you run and the sessions that you do? I know you do sessions for practice sessions for mediums. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Okay,
and anything else that our participants and people who see this video might like to know about?
Okay, across my community, I have 8 groups, which are different circles that are put together through 1 week. So across 1 week, I will be teaching 8 different groups. 2 of those groups are healing groups. One of them is a global open platform where, because my students are right across the world, so that any one group can be mixed up with Australian, New Zealand, American, Germany, the Netherlands. We've got so many different people. So once a week, I have a global platform practice night on a Friday evening where I invite anybody in to actually get practice. We sit in the power and it gives people the opportunity to work. And then the other circles are committed groups where people like Monday morning, Monday night, Tuesday morning, Wednesday night, Thursday night are all practice groups where people come together. So in those groups, it's not just about getting a contact. It's about the understanding and the development of the aspects of all mediumship, but also about self-awareness, about developing yourself. There's a professional aspect where I will teach you professionally, but also it's about strengthening and understanding your link with the spirit world so you become a better person to represent the spirit, not just give a contact.
Right.
And so that's it. And then once a month I do an open workshop on a Sunday, just 10 till 2 on Zoom. The next one's on the 1st of November, and that's open to everybody and is on my website as well. But I can certainly be contacted if anybody's interested in joining a group. So
the best way for people to contact you is?
Through my email. If you go to my website, www.christinemorgan.com.au, and send me an email, and I will respond.